Brave family. It's me, Lauren Hope. I am a storyteller, mental health advocate, and a publicist, amongst other things. And for the remainder of 2021, I will be your Brave TV host. Brave TV was created in response to the COVID-19 pandemic to bring stories of hope. Each month, I have the amazing opportunity to interview This Is My Brave alumni. They will share with you their stories on life-saving topics around mental health and substance use disorder. September is Recovery Month and Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. This episode, myself and 3 other Brave alumni are going to talk about our connections to suicide and how we found recovery. A disclaimer, because talking about suicide is a tough topic and a challenging one, if you feel triggered throughout this episode or if you're struggling, help is out there. Call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255. You can also text the crisis text line at 741-741. All right, join me in welcoming our This Is My Brave alum. I'm going to welcome them into our little showroom here. And here they are. I'm going to switch. Here we are. So we have with us here today 3 folks who have been connected to This Is My Brave in one way or another. I'd love for you guys to go around and share what show you were in and tell me how things are going for you. We'll start, I love how this is like Hollywood Squares. We'll start with you, Sean. Tell me what show you participated in.
I was in the, hi everyone. I was in Hampton Roads, Virginia. Ultimately, it was something we did online because COVID got in the way. What was that, Lauren, 2019? 2020.
That was last year.
Yeah, how did I get that one wrong? 2020 Hampton Roads. And for a few years after I'd gone through, or as I continue to go through my own struggles, I just wanted to talk more about it. And I didn't know what that was going to look or sound like, even, just, hey, I want to talk about it. Because I know that when people hear people talking about their struggles, they feel less alone, usually, no guarantees. And I said, okay, like I've been on the receiving end of that. Let me see if I can do that. And maybe someone out there hears this and they're like, oh, okay, I relate to that bald dude. So it was a no-brainer. And it was a good experience. I met you, I met some other really cool people. And I just love when people get real with their struggles, and particularly in a way in which they want to help people a little bit out with it. So yeah, thanks for inviting me here.
Thanks for being here. Naisha, what show were you in with This Is My Brave?
Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I was a part of the Black Voices show that was done virtually. So right after the COVID pandemic, we had a racial pandemic that kind of spiraled out of control. And I think This Is My Brave decided that it was important that they hear from Black voices. So I was a part of that one that was done virtually.
And Haley.
So I'm Haley Lynch, and I was in the 2018 Iowa City, Iowa show. Oh gosh, I forget the rest of your question.
That's all right. We're just updating people on what we're going through, or just how things are. So you were in the show in 2018, and so it's a really hard topic to talk about, but I think it's important that we do. For a long time, I thought even saying the word suicide was like a hard, uncomfortable thing until I started getting in spaces like This Is My Brave. So if you feel comfortable, I wanted to ask you all to share a little bit about your connection to suicide or suicide loss. We'll go in reverse. Haley?
Okay. So I have struggled with suicidal ideation and self-harm since I was 9 years old. I went through a lot of traumatic events over my teenage years, which led to multiple suicide attempts and hospitalizations, including a long-term inpatient residency, I guess, if you will, at a mental health institute. And when I turned 18, I, really wanted to focus on, okay, like I'm an adult, I want to kind of take control over my life. I met someone who we fell in love, brought a kiddo into the world. And after about 4 years together, he ended up dying by suicide himself. And it really wrecked my world. And I thought, how do I prevent this from happening? And how do I keep myself in line as well? So I just started opening up and just became very candid. And I found that by sharing my story, I found healing, but I also found connection with others. And that allowed others to, I guess, feel more confident and self-aware of what they were going through and their personal experiences, which allowed them to open up. And it just kind of created this community. And I've just really built on that since then. It's been about 9 years that I've been doing that. So.
Community matters. It definitely matters. Naisha, if you feel comfortable sharing what your connection to suicide or suicide loss is.
Of course. So back in 2007, my sister was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And my entire family was kind of like, what is going on? Like, what's up with this diagnosis? And she was diagnosed during the manic state. But what we didn't know was coming was the depressive state, because bipolar, there's two sides, right? And during the depressive state, she had made her attempt. And back then I was still working in accounting. I was at Deloitte, the beginning of my accounting career. And that's like the worst time, you're working crazy hours, or you're working long hours, excuse me. And I was trying to help my sister at the same time. And so in 2008, as I'm trying to help my sister battle this depression, and I'm trying to figure out what is depression anyway, I found myself in a deep depression. And that's when I was first hospitalized. And that's when I first myself got the same diagnosis that my sister received. And I was scared out of my mind. Like, what do you mean? Is what's happening to her going to happen to me? And I later realized that even though we have the same diagnosis, the trajectory of our lives are different. We're unique as our fingerprint. And, but in 2017, the depression came back, and I realized it was always brought on by like stress and like feeling like I'm not performing well. And then, there goes the negative self-talk and all these warning signs that I ignored. And this time it came back and it was worse. And I was by myself. Before I was in Boston, now I'm by myself in the DC area. And it got really, really dark for me. And thankfully my family, who just is amazing, realized that something was going on. They kept calling me every day. And that one day that they didn't hear from me was the day that I attempted. And so my sister and my cousin, flew down from the New England area. And they said, no, you're going to the hospital and you're getting help. Like this, we're not going to allow this to happen to you. So since then, I actually lost 5 family members to suicide, and just got so angry and frustrated that I decided to start my own platform to help people that look like me along on their wellness journey, so that, I can connect them with resources, peer support groups, whatever the case may be.
Thank you for sharing that. Sean, would you like to share your connection to suicide or suicide loss?
Sure. So when I was in my 20s, I lost my best friend to suicide. He was a New York City police officer, and he had a gun, and he put a bullet in his head. And it was interesting. At the time, I was living abroad. I was teaching English in Japan. And I remember being very numb. I don't think there's a right way or wrong way to respond to things like this, grief, shock, right? And I remember when I came back several months later, my life went on. Actually, my life was not the same, but it wasn't that different. Because judge me if you want. And it was about 10 years after that, more or less, where I started to get sick. I had some physical health problems, some mental health problems. And there were these moments, and I remember them rather vividly, where I didn't want to live anymore. And I wasn't really suicidal, how I define that, but I just was in the space between of wanting to live and not wanting to live. I was in a lot of pain. And in some point in that, I remember, as corny as this sounds, it was this aha moment of, oh shit, that's how Jimmy felt. Maybe not exactly right, but that kind of pain. And it was a moment of can we ever really know what someone's going through if we don't go through something? I don't want to ever compare experiences, but just that level of despair or pain. And so I started talking more about it. There weren't a lot of spaces that I found, but I was always open to talk about it. And since then, I had 2 hospitalizations, both for about a week, and learned a little bit about the mental health system, what I thought was helpful, and some things that were not at all. And just tried to talk more about it, sometimes on a stage, like This Is My Brave, or I have I'm not going to do self-promotion stuff here, but I've done some other stuff, like It Sounds, Haley and Aisha have done, and yourself, to try to let folks know whatever it is we can let them know so they feel less alone. That's my jam. That's just like, if I can help you feel a little bit less alone, I'm good. It's not a panacea, but yeah, that was over 20 years ago. And one of the things that you know when someone dies is they don't, at least my beliefs are, they don't come back. It's a tough one to deal with. So that's that.
I can't thank you guys enough for sharing that experience. It's important. And what I think I hear from all of you is that sharing with This Is My Brave and other platforms was healing for you all. For me personally, I survived a suicide attempt in 2014. And at the time, I was in the height of my television career. And I didn't know how to cope with my anxiety and depression at the time. And I willingly left my that TV career and then fell into the darkest depression of my life. And then like 2 years later, I was homeless and unemployed. And when I was getting back on my feet and starting to write about life after a suicide attempt, because and maybe you all can share this, you all maybe had similar experiences, I felt like I lost so much and I was beginning again. I cut myself off from friends and I had to find myself, but I knew that I just didn't want to hold it in anymore. And that's when I found This Brave. And I couldn't believe that people were talking about these very serious things on a public platform. And so I commend you all. For me, it set me on the trajectory of becoming a mental health speaker and emboldened me to do even more. It sounds like it did that for you also. So I want to hear kind of how it changed your life to talk about this. This Is My Brave. It sounds like in some way all of you all have gone on to do your own podcast, you can self-promote, or your own organization, helping people feel that sense of community that we felt with This Is My Brave. Haley, tell me a little bit about your experience after sharing.
Okay, so I actually started sharing through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. I think the first time was in 2013. So going back, my anxiety was very much a lot of social anxiety as well. And I used to not even be able to go into a gas station and pay for my own gas. And that was before you could just scan your card at the gas pump. And so I would rather run out of gas on the side of the road and call someone to come save me than going and talk to a cashier for 30 seconds. And so after, my fiance, he died a few months before our wedding, but for our 4 years together, he was always the voice of everything. He would always do the talking. And so in 2013 was the first year that I spoke publicly, and I volunteered for our local Out of the Darkness suicide awareness walk in our community. And I kind of was like, I'll be the guest speaker this year. And afterwards I was like, why did I do that? Because I don't speak publicly. I gave like a 7-minute speech, which seemed like a lot at the time. And afterward, it was just like, holy heck, like I can do this. I feel this huge change in me. And it just really kind of tumbled out of control there. And I've just opened up as a person, just being able to publicly speak about anything, but specifically about something I'm passionate about. And that's just helping others. I read this quote years ago that said, be the person that you wish had been there for you when you were younger. And that's kind of my motivation behind a lot of it. So I started with AFSP, but I've partnered and kind of started freelancing and doing my own thing I get contacted by schools if there's been a suicide. I come in, I do bereavement work, I do prevention work, I do just awareness work. I speak in churches, like I said, schools, different organizations. I've partnered with grief camps. I've partnered with suicide specific organizations. And then, so when This Is My Brave came along and I didn't get to just talk about suicide and suicide prevention and suicide bereavement, I got to talk about all of the mental health. I'm diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, as well as anxiety, depression, and a few other things. And I got to talk about all of that as well, and just kind of a whole mixture of things. And that just kind of broadened the horizon. And a lot of people will see my videos. I've been invited on different podcasts, and I've gotten to help out with like different things like car shows, and just asked to speak. And it's amazing because every chance that I get, I meet new people, I get to hear new experiences, and then I get more people that come up to me later on that are like, hey, I started doing this as well and pursuing these same types of things because I saw your video. Like Katie Grana, who's with This Is My Brave, she told me, she's like, I saw your video and now she works with This Is My Brave. I've had people compete in the Miss America pageants, and their platform is mental health. And I've gotten people to audition for This Is My Brave shows who previously had never spoken publicly about experiences that they've had. And it's just really kind of encouraged me and pushed me to keep doing that so that I can continue getting others to be able to open up about their experiences as well, and kind of have that journey of self-discovery.
So much of what you're saying just shows the importance of story. I remember when I was struggling, I came in a family that wasn't talking about suicide at all. I wish I would have known about something like This Is My Brave. It would have taken out the shame and the stigma, and it would have led to some acceptance, which I think could have also led me to get to treatment faster. And so I just love that you are sharing in that way.
Well, I came from a family where we didn't talk about it. My dad, like I'm from Iowa, so it's a lot of farmers, and my dad was raised to believe that depression was an excuse of laziness. And even watching me struggle as a teenager, like it never really clicked and made sense to him. And so as a mom, I wanted to make sure that like I'm setting a different example. And that's also been like a huge motivator behind everything that I've done so far.
And I thank you, each of you, because telling your stories, being on this platform is part of dispelling the stigma. And we know that stigma is a huge reason why so many people don't reach out for help. I also wanted to mention this, some pretty startling statistics around suicide, that according to the Centers for Disease Control, it is the 10th leading cause of death in the US. And in 2019, over 47,000 people died by suicide. And so we have to keep talking about it because it's a pervasive problem in our country. Naisha, after your own personal experiences, you went on to create an organization. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I do want to share my coming out story, because I think that's such an interesting point when we all kind of decided to kind of open up and share our story, because like you just mentioned, Lauren, it's such a huge stigma, especially in the Black community, where it's looked at like, well, especially African Americans, like, you survived slavery. What do you mean? You can't survive, depression? What are you talking about? Or pray it away, like go to church and just pray about it. What's your problem? And I remember working with McLean Hospital, which is, a very large mental health hospital here in Massachusetts. And it's pretty well known nationally, if not globally. So feel free to Google it, McLean Hospital. They actually did a campaign to kind of disrupt the stigma. And my mom had sent it to me. She's like, I think you should do this. And I'm like, what? You mean tell everybody about my mental illness? Are you serious right now? Like, I don't know about this. And then I sat with it and I thought about it. And because suicide was such a big problem or issue in my family, both on my mom's and my dad's side, I decided that I don't want my little cousins to have to sit with this, or my niece and my nephews to have to sit with this and think that they're alone or there's something seriously wrong with them, like they're alone in this. So I said, I want to do it for them. I want to come out with my story and I want to share it. So I did the whole photo shoot, and write up and all this stuff like that. And they were like, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And the day that I got the article and everything, I decided that I was going to share it on Facebook. I was like, okay, I'm being really bold now. And mind you, I'm single, I had just left my job and didn't really know what was going to be for me for the future. I had no idea. So there's a lot at stake here, right? And I remember just going on Facebook, sharing the link and running to the bathroom and just crying, like that release of like, oh my God, I just did it. And that's that whole, like, this is my brave, like I did it brave, I did it courageously. That's that feeling of like, I just took over this thing that I was so afraid of, this thing that so many people kind of like talked about and shared my story without me giving them the right to share my story. So I took that on, now this is my story to share. This is my story to tell, and I'm going to tell it how I want to share it. And I remember coming back to my computer, and then all these messages started flooding in, because remember, I'm the person that like looked like she had it all together, corporate job, traveling, and all this stuff on Facebook, right? Because you could create whatever you want to create on Facebook. No one has to know. And so it was a shock to a lot of people. Why didn't you reach out to me and tell me, da, 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 all those things, right, that people say. And then I also got, messages when people are like, oh, me too, I'm dealing with this too, and I'm struggling with this too. And thank you so much for opening up and all of these different things. So, anyone out there contemplating and trying to figure out if they want to share their story, you don't have to share it on a big stage like us. But you'd be surprised. Laura just read the statistics, how many people are struggling with it. And by you sharing your story, like Sean mentioned, you don't feel so alone. People don't feel so alone. But to answer your question, Lauren, I did decide to start an organization. It's called Pure Spark. And right now we are just in Massachusetts because it's just me and, 2 other people running the show. But we are an organization that's really out here trying to help Black folks link up with different wellness practitioners. And, it's tough because a lot of Black folks are interested in talking and speaking with someone that looks like them, because it's just one less layer to kind of go through when you're talking about racial trauma or anything like that. If someone looks like you and is walking this earth as a Black human being or walking this country as a Black human being, they understand some of the traumas that you're already dealing with. So I just try to help people along on their journey. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I know when we share our stories, we give people the validation that it's okay to not be okay. And, I had a similar experience, and I realized then so many people in my community were suffering in silence, and something about me sharing made them say, oh, like that not alone feeling is so huge. Sean, after your This Is My Brave experience, you've done something different too to connect people and give them that sense of connection and storytelling. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, I was starting and stopping projects pre This Is My Brave. I had this idea that I wanted to just do something to help. But here's something that I don't know if this gets talked about a lot. I was struggling. Like, I could be on a Zoom call or on a stage. Sometimes I was a teacher for many years, and I don't know exactly what people were thinking, but they probably thought he's mostly pretty well put together. That's how we present when we have to, right? And I wasn't. So I would start something and stop. I'd start something and get sick. I'd start something and go broke. I'd start something and it was constant. And this is like a lot of people's struggles, right? And it's a weird thing that happened. This Is My Brave, which was a really powerful experience. And then because of the lockdown, I had a different opportunity, which sounds really weird, but people were living their lives very differently. So I started 2 projects that truthfully, I don't know if I would have started had it not been for the lockdown. I'd like to believe I would have, but I don't know. One of them, and this is in the same order, one of them was a storytelling organization called Grit, Grit. And it was a certain kind of story. I don't have the exact words around it. I'm still working on my like verbiage, but it's like, let's talk about the stories that matter, right? And that's been going really well. It's just, it's shape shifted as it's gone on, but we have a large group of human beings that are willing to get together and get honest, and a space that's safe. And we have events and workshops and that. The other thing I did, and this was all in the middle of 2020, so it was like a bizarrely important year for me. I started a podcast called Suicide Noted, and it is just conversations with suicide attempt survivors. And we're on our 75th episode. Yeah, I know. And it's been amazing. It's just as weird. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. Amazing, right? That sounds bizarre to connect amazing with it, conversations with attempt survivors. But the feedback, the conversations themselves, people that hear it, what I've learned and how it's helped me. You know, people say to me, we were talking a little bit earlier, Lauren, about, I think the word you used was compassion fatigue. What was the word? Yeah. And that may happen to me, but people will ask me, are you taking care of yourself? Are you okay? And I think, yes, like this is as helpful for me as I think it is for anybody else, because I just don't hear people talking enough about their struggles. And I know for some people that sounds really dark, and maybe nothing I say will make a difference to you, and that's okay. There are a lot of people that need to hear this stuff. Mm-hmm. And there will be people who think it's dark, and that's just a different audience, and that's okay. Yeah. Go see a Disney movie. That's cool. That's cool. I'm not your guy. We're going to have these conversations, and there are more people than I think most people know that are needing it, and they may never say anything. They may never reach out, but they're there in Tuscaloosa, Alabama in their bedroom, and they pop on a podcast, or they see one of your YouTube videos, or Haley, and it matters, man.
It does matter.
So yeah, so it's been really amazing. It's a really amazing journey. I'll shut up now.
I'm gonna connect everyone. Haley, yes.
Oh, I was just gonna, he said something that kind of sparked something. When we go up and we have these conversations too, people always think that we've healed and that we've got it together. And that always blows my mind. Like, I get it, because I probably would have felt the same if I were in an audience listening. I'd be like, wow, they've really figured it out. My most recent suicide attempt was in 2019. Mm-hmm. And like, that was the first time in about a decade, or yeah, a little over a decade that I'd had an attempt. And I remember it just blew everyone's mind, because they're like, don't you prevent suicide for like your hobby, I guess, hobby. But it was like, yeah, but the process of healing is not linear. And like, I still struggle. Like, I'm not out here because I figured it out. I'm out here because I'm figuring it out. And that's just one of those things that, you know, people hear us talk about it and they're like, all right, like, you guys are good. And they think we have all the answers, but it's like, no, I'm still on my journey. And so when Sean said that, I was just like, okay, I want to make a note of that too.
Yeah, Sean.
Well, we're sparking each other with these thoughts, you know, because it's my mind doesn't work linearly either. So I'm a guy who will likely be what I think the sort of correct diagnosis is passive suicidal ideation. I'm not sure if I said that correctly. I think it is probably going to be that way for the rest of my life. I may not be. It may go away at some point, and hey, but I'd welcome that. But I've learned to live with this idea of, and it's a thing. It sounds perhaps to people like, is that a thing? It's a thing. There are people who are, and I don't know how the right words around it, but it's always on the table. It's a possibility. And yeah. And for me, I don't want it, but in a way, it kind of allows me to do some of the work I do. It gives me a kick in the ass. And maybe I don't need to be that way, and I'd still have that same, you know, I'd still do the same work. I don't know, but right now I'm doing my very best to make it work kind of for me and not against me. But like Haley said, it is jagged and not at all. Yeah. Like you might see somebody or hear somebody and think, yeah, no, they're good. It's like, maybe not. Maybe not.
So true.
I like
Healing's not
to
linear.
call that, oh, sorry. I like to call that the gray area of suicide. I've heard that used a few times where we're not like actively suicidal, but it's not gone. And I think I heard someone say once that, you know, it's there because our brains have become so trained to that that's just kind of our automatic. And I have that where I'll have a bad day and then I think that, but it's like, that's not like I'm not actively suicidal. So I've always heard it called the gray area of suicide. So
And you both are right that people like that healing is not, I don't think you ever, or in my opinion, arrived to this point where you're healed. You're always in the process of healing. And I'm wearing my Got Recovery shirt because, you know, recovery doesn't just mean recovery from substance use disorder. Mental health recovery is on that stream also. So I wanted to ask you all, what has helped your recovery? Understanding it's not linear and that there will still be hard times, dark times, challenging times, but what has helped? Naisha?
I think that there are different tools for different situations. For example, you know, when I was suicidal, I needed to be in the hospital because I was a danger and a threat to myself. Um, Also, I was in intensive therapy. I was in group therapy. I was in one-on-one therapy. I was taking medication that later turned out was harmful because it was just such a strong medication. It was lithium. For anyone who knows anything about lithium, it's super strong. But it did what it needed to do. It got me back to baseline. But you know, one of the things that I realized, you know, from going through two separate instances of deep, dark depression is that, you know, your lifestyle has to change, because if it doesn't change, you'll go right back to where you were before. So, you know, that's kind of what 2017 taught me, because I thought, oh, in 2008, when I went through what I mentioned earlier, I thought, oh, I'm healed. All right, good. All right, glad that's over. Let's forget about that. Let's forget that ever happened. Let's continue on with our lives. Let's act like nothing happened, people. Nope, nothing to look at here. I am fine. And I didn't tell anybody. I just swept it under the rug. But back in 2017, when it came back, I said, okay, I didn't learn everything that I was supposed to learn. Not that I was kicking myself in the butt, but it was like a wake-up call to say that, Naisha, this healing journey is really a lifestyle change. So the things that I kind of do now and I've implemented now, so it started off with hospitalizations, group therapy, one-on-one therapy, medication. Then it turned to kind of holistic things like yoga. Now, like I mentioned before when we were talking earlier, how I've gotten in more into Chinese medicine, which is a lot of like meditation and herbs that has like, I mean, this is like something I've never felt before. And it's almost kind of scary because you're like, I feel so good. I'm afraid to go back. I always want to feel this feeling. So I'm really, really hyper focused on making sure that my routine and my lifestyle allows me to continue to heal. So, I mean, I've changed my diet. I wake up every morning and I go to Jamaica Pond, which is, you know, like a 10-minute walk from my house. And I make sure that I'm filling my cup first, because if I'm not well, I can't function. And you know, those are like exercises and things that I do, but then also relationally with other people, I say no. And that was something that was so hard for me to do before. I was like the yes woman. Yes, 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 I could do it. I'm a strong Black woman. I can do everything, put it on me. I got it. And now I've decided, no, actually, I can't do it all. And it's okay to ask for help. So it's a hodgepodge of things, you know, kind of depending on where I am mentally and depending on the day. But right here, right now in this season, it's a lot of holistic work around my food, my diet, and my lifestyle.
Haley, what about you? What's helped?
So I'm kind of the same where I try to do a lot of like the different practices. So I do yoga, meditation. I've even done what's called suspension, where they put the hooks in your back and you kind of hang out. And these are, old school practices that have worked, and they do work. They seem a little intense. And so I'm definitely always open to talk to people about my experiences with them. But one of the things that I found works best for me is being out in nature. So I'm from Iowa. It's like a 12-hour drive to the Rocky Mountains. I do it regularly. And people are always like, you're like, it must be nice going out there all the time. I'm like, my life depends on it. So I also had to make a lot of lifestyle changes when I was a teenager and going through, I guess, the most of my hardships. It was because of situations that I put myself in and people that I was around. So I ended up being homeless. I was runaway at 16. I was hanging out with people that were using any type of substance under the sun. Fortunately, I didn't get into a lot of that personally, but I was around it 24/7 and just was hanging out with a lot of people that weren't good for me. And so over the years, I've had to really work on setting boundaries, and it's something I still struggle with. And I just try to be aware, like, is this person supporting my life? And if they're making poor decisions, like, how is that affecting me? Am I staying up worrying about them all the time? Is it reflecting on my own decisions? And then just kind of also being aware of what I'm putting into my own body. So I come from a long line of addicts on both sides of my family. Typically it's alcohol addiction. And I noticed that every time that I would drink, which was sparingly, but I wouldn't be able to stop myself. And then I would find myself kind of in a depressive hole each time. And so I really learned, like, okay, even though I wasn't doing it that often, it was still having enough of an impact that I don't want to do it at all. I also go on medication off and on. I, talk a lot with my doctor about it. So I'm not just going off and on my own, but there are times I'll be on medication for a couple of years and then I'll feel good enough to wean off and be off of it for a while. And then something might happen, whether it's like something physically happens, or I just start noticing a change in my mental state, or I do go back onto medication. But a lot of it is just, I've learned to communicate my needs. So in the past, it used to be I would wait until I was hitting rock bottom or about to hit rock bottom. And then it's like, oh my gosh, where am I and how do I get back up? And now I've just started really focusing on, like, okay, like, how am I doing compared to how I was last week? How am I doing compared to how I was last month? I work in an emergency room right now, and it's high stress. Our COVID numbers are going back up. It's a lot going on. And so I've been really having to focus on, when I leave work, trying to take everything that I've experienced at work, which gets very heavy, and just not carrying it home with me, and trying to find ways after work. So I work third shift. And so I might go out for breakfast after work. I drop my kiddo off at school. I might go have breakfast and just not talk to anybody during the whole breakfast time and stay off social media and just refocus. And a lot of it is just trying to be self-aware so that I don't have to hit rock bottom before I reach out for help. And so that's kind of been my biggest thing that I rely on. I also go to therapy. Again, I don't go to therapy continuously. There are times where I really need it, and I might go once or twice a week. And there's other times where I feel confident at where I am that I don't have to go as regularly. So it just really depends, and just really working on being aware of what's going on internally.
What I hear from all of you is that, recovery is not one size fits all. And that's one of the things I want to stress to folks, is to find what works for you. For some people, management and therapy works. There are other people who yoga works. And what I think is so great about what's happening in mental health and substance use disorder is that it's becoming more client person centered and helping someone else plan their own, what recovery looks like to them. So Sean, for you, what works and what helps you in your recovery journey?
Oh man, I struggle, man. I struggle. I got some stuff that works sometimes, and weirdly, I don't do it. Right. The list would be exactly what you would see in terms of medication and exercise, the things you're supposed to do. But let me add a couple of things. If my sister didn't come into my life to help me out, I'd be dead. Period. And here's the thing, and it might apply more to men, but probably everyone. Men like me, and I'll just talk about men like me because I'm me. We will not ask for help often. Now that applies to a lot of people. A guy like me, and let's just call it what it is. I'm like a white, middle-aged, able-bodied American man. Like every non-marginalized box is checked. I am supposed to be successful. And if you're not, I'm not sure we want to hear about it. And that's cool. Like we've had our day in the sun. I get it. I'm not asking for help, but I was like almost homeless. And so my sister was if she didn't come in and help me, and some of that meant money, I don't think I'd be here. So can I take a couple of thoughts and sort of flip them as a sort of call to action? Is that okay? And I know most people know this, but there might be people in your life who are not asking for help that might need help. And the way you might need to help them isn't what you're immediately thinking. They might say F you. It doesn't mean they don't need help, right? It might mean you need to send them some money and just let it, I don't know. There's no one case by case, right? The other thing that's helped me, and it's slow going, is finding people who understand how to engage and actually have a conversation. That's my thing. And even though on here, I blab, I think I've gotten a lot better at that and hopefully can attract people, because I think when we talk about holding space and just listen, people suck at it or they just don't do it. And so I think if people had a better understanding of how their words are so damaging, even it's no big deal. That's a damaging thing you just said. There's so many things we say, and I'm sure most people are well-intentioned, that are damaging. And I could go on a whole thing, and I don't want to, about what to do and what to say and what not to say. I think if people had a better understanding of what real listening and empathy and holding space looked like and sounded like, I believe strongly that the suicide numbers would plummet. I do. And right now they're going up. You had given a statistic, and I don't know if they have the 2019, 2020 numbers. They're going up.
It's always like a year or so behind
Right.
the Centers for Disease Control numbers. Yeah.
And so I'm sure a lot of the things that people are doing are helping. And if we weren't doing them, they'd be even higher. Mm-hmm. But the one thing I talk about as often as I can is you got to learn how to shut up.
And listen.
I actually learned, I just start with shutting up, because shutting up is measurable.
Yeah.
Listening is a thing that people stop talking. Like, can I give you a quick formula?
Sure.
Yeah, because people love formulas, right? Here we go. You're engaged with somebody in any kind of pain, including I'm having a bad day. Here's Sean's formula. Ready? 90% of it, you shouldn't be talking. That's right. Okay. And then you've got 10%. 90% of that should be you asking questions that include questions around just clarifying what someone's saying, because you're usually not having the same conversation, or trying to understand, or asking for permission. If you do that, the world changes, and you don't even worry about what you're supposed to say, because people will be astounded that you've created space for them to actually get off their chest what they need to get off of their chest. Because I've had people who say to me, well, what do I say then? What do I do in that moment? I said, well, just give it like an extra 5 seconds. Don't say anything. Don't feel it. Shut up. See what happens.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you my phone number. And if you're really at a loss of what to say, I'll walk you through it. No one's ever going to call. You don't need it.
No, I think it's important to hear people's stories. And in the last couple of years of the training that I've done, that's one of the biggest things they stress is to hear someone's story.
Yeah.
If you're watching this and you maybe might think that somebody you are friends with or connected to is struggling, one of the things I learned at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, they have this program called Talk Saves Lives. If you have a chapter in your area, I highly recommend that you have them come out and do Talk Saves Lives. But it really told me, it goes down to the age-old saying of see something, say something. If you see someone and they're your friend or loved one and they start withdrawing, maybe they're using substances more than they normally would, they're giving away their earthly possessions, they're even saying words like, I feel like I'm a burden, or I just don't want to be here anymore. Take those as signs that something could be wrong and just be willing to have the conversation. Another amazing resource I want to give is that the Suicide Prevention Lifeline is a lifesaver, not only for people who are struggling, but if you know someone and you think that they're struggling, you can call the Lifeline and they can walk you through on how to best support that person and they'll connect them to resources. So last question for you guys. If someone's watching this and they're thinking, maybe my loved one's struggling and you all have lost people to suicide, what advice would you give them? Sean, you're smiling. You want to?
Yeah, I'm just gonna go on I'm gonna go on my little podium again, and I've said most of it. Is look, there are some conversations that are super hard. I don't have children. I can't imagine what it's like to have a conversation with your kid who might be considering ending their life. And those are very charged, right? With family and certain friends. And so I'm not suggesting any of this is easy, but again, and I know it sounds like a directive, and look, shoot the messenger, not the message. You don't have to like me. Stop talking so much. I don't mean like, I know that I don't mean the person. We need to stop talking so that the person has space to talk. That's what they need typically to do. We live in the age of information. Most people know what's out there in terms of resources. You should still suggest them. What we don't do particularly well, I think we outsource empathy. Get it over there, get it over there, get it. No, if someone's coming to you, they're asking it from you. So when you say hear their story, you gotta, and if you're gonna hear their story, you got to stop talking. I know I sound maybe weird when I say that. It is so, you just can't talk and listen. So start there. I'm not suggesting it's easy. Just start there. And when you want to talk, give it 3 more seconds and see what happens. Oh, the irony as he blabs away.
Haley, what advice would you give?
So I think that one of the hardest things in starting that conversation, oh gosh, the AFSP had a campaign, and it was something about the awkward. And
the awkward.
Yes, seize the awkward. That's what it was. Okay, I was there at the meeting when they like revealed it, and we were like, yeah, it's awkward. And so one of the stigmas that I've seen firsthand, like we have this school in Iowa where we were losing more than 1 student to suicide per year. And so there's a group of us who do suicide bereavement specifically for children and teenagers. And we asked the school, like, hey, can we come in and do suicide prevention, offer bereavement services? We want to help. Like, you are losing more than 1 student per year to suicide. There's obviously a need, and we're not wanting anything except to come in and assist. And the superintendent said, no, if you talk to my students about suicide, you're going to put the idea in their head. It's like, the idea is already there.
Yeah.
Which is why you're losing students to suicide. We want to come in and we want to talk about it. We want to give them the resources. We want to let them know that these thoughts and feelings are not abnormal, but that there's things that they can do. And so I've heard that a lot. And so that's one of the things that I've seen firsthand, and even with my own friends and my own experiences, that people don't want to talk about it because it's 1, awkward, and 2, they're worried that if they bring it up, it might get you thinking about it. People who die by suicide, we think of it as this kind of spontaneous thing that they just wake up and decide to do it one day. And it's not. Those thoughts and ideas, they are there. They're culminating. If you bring it up and, hey, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, I'm fine. but are you really? Like, and it's okay to say, hey, I'm worried that you might be feeling suicidal. Again, super awkward, but once you put it out there, you're giving them that space to talk that Sean's talking about. And from there, just again, like he said, listen. And then you can, use those kind of, when someone talks, it's okay to repeat what they've said to acknowledge that, okay, I'm hearing you. You're saying that you are feeling suicidal. And again, that prompts the conversation for them. Yeah, I am feeling suicidal. And it's going to open it and kind of segue and give them the opportunity to, okay, they're hearing what I'm saying. And it's going to allow me to feel more comfortable to continue on with what I need to say. And then you can just go from there. And another thing that he mentioned about the males, I've learned over the years, men don't always, as women, we're taught that we're allowed to have emotions and we can, I'm just feeling sad today. Men are not taught the same thing. A lot of people in society teach men, like, you got to man up, you got to be tough. Men will sometimes, and not all the time, but you'll see them kind of brush their symptoms off as physical symptoms because that's easier to talk about than emotional. So I'm just tired. And so that's just another thing to be aware of. Like your dude friend is kind of withdrawing and he's always talking about how tired he is or his back hurts, and he's using that as a reason to not participate in things that usually that might prompt you to be like, hey, is there more than that just going on? And so just kind of being aware of things like that. But a lot of it is just listening, opening up, and that suicide hotline, 1-800-273-8255. I use that myself. I've lost probably a dozen people to suicide over the years. And, it's big on me to try and be there as much as I can. But as a caretaker, that also puts a lot of burden on you as well. And I like to have that additional support. I've been trained in what to do and what resources to call and who to talk to. And I still like having that additional person in my corner who is saying that, yes, this is how it's going, and kind of pushing me to be able to continue being supported for the person that I'm assisting at the time.
Thank you, Haley. Naisha, I wanted to ask you our last question. So we've talked a lot about someone who wants to support someone else. What would you say to someone who could be watching this and struggling too, has maybe thought of a suicidal, who's had suicidal ideation or is struggling?
I think one of the things that was so helpful for me to hear from my loving, caring, beautiful family was that this is not permanent. And I think that when you're in it, right, when you're in that dark space, when you're depressed, when you can't get out of bed, when you're so weak that everything is so hard to do, even taking a shower, even eating is tough. You feel like this is forever. Like I'm always going to be here. And the one thing that always kind of like, even when I was in that depressive state, the one thing that gave me a little bit of hope was someone reminding me that this is not forever. They couldn't tell me when it was going to end, but they kept reminding me day after day. And I mean, I was in this state for over 6 to 9 months. It was a long time. But they never gave up. They kept reminding me that, Naisha, more of your life was in a non-depressive state. Know that this is only a period of time. You're going to get the help that you need, and you're going to get through this. You are going to get through this. So I want to affirm to anyone that might be struggling right now that you will get through this. This is only a point in time. All of us here, all of us 4 squares on here has gone through something or is going through something. But it's a matter of, getting the help you need, finding a peer support group. There's so many out there. I think Lauren and Haley, you mentioned some, but then there's also NAMI and,
Yes.
which is National Association of Mental Illness. And so there's probably one located in your area as well. If you are a parent or a relative of someone dealing, NAMI has a great family to family program. So as a mom or as a dad, how do you deal with a son or a daughter that's suicidal? You need support as well, like not just the kids, because like I just said about what happened to my sister, it landed me in the hospital too. So just make sure that you're prioritizing your mental health. And this is something that I'm telling you, I have to mention and make sure I do on a daily basis. It's that serious. We don't take it that seriously because, you know, we're in a society that's always like go, 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 rush, 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 make money, make money, make money. But you got to make time for yourself. We're not machines.
That's so important. I think we really all kind of shared the importance of story, the importance of community, and that we want anyone watching to know that your story matters and that you matter. And there is help out there. The Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. Also, if you're into texting, you can text the crisis text line 741-741. Thank you so much, Brave family. We'll return next month with another round of storytellers talking about life-saving information. Until next time.